Markiyan Matsekh.
Hello. Nice to be here. We're going to talk about growth, and we're going to apply a lot of what you've heard just now. We're going to go to ground level and talk about how do we execute on it, and how can you as a PM execute on it. So especially if you don't have any resources, very typical situation. How I came to this talk is, as I started learning more about the empowered model, Markiyan school, focusing on impact, on outcomes and some metrics, sometimes I've found myself in situations like, actually, I don't think we need to build anything to move these metrics. It's much better to launch this campaign here, influence incentives there, etc. So I found that it's actually, you can grow ARR not by building features, but by hacking incentive structure across the organization. And we're going to talk specifically about that, more about the CSMs. And why should you trust me? I've done it a couple times. I've done it at Vimeo and Deel. Anyone heard of Vimeo or Deel here? These are great companies. Vimeo is public by now. Deel, I think, will be public eventually. Very fast-growing company. Both are in, well, it's a mix of B2C and B2B. I'm doing this now at Verif. It's a cozier, smaller Estonian startup that I'm in love with. But these things apply across various types of companies. Yeah, you're going to hear a bit about my story at Deel specifically, but similar happened at Vimeo. So when I joined Deel, this is a situation I saw. And it's not about the product. Product at Deel was amazing. And why this happened is I joined and I was looking for ways to increase retention. Like I'm a new product director, want to prove myself very fast, find those low-hanging fruits. And I do what I did at Vimeo before. I look for why we're losing deals, why customers are churning. And to my disappointment, I found none of the low-hanging fruits. The number one reason why the customers were churning is just they just stop using the product, stop responding to emails, they just stop engaging, and they leave, they stop paying eventually, they churn. What can you build to fix this? It's very hard to build something to fix this. So it was hurting me a lot. And it was hurting me a lot, especially not only because I couldn't find a low-hanging fruit to prove myself, but also because Deel has so many features, so many beautiful features that no one was using. And anyone who's worked at a B2B especially company or founder mode company, you very often see the situation where you build this one feature to close this one deal, and then this one feature to close this deal, and every deal is the most important deal in the world because it will help buy a new house for the salesperson who's closing it. So you're like, you end up with a plethora of these beautiful features, and they're actually very often the very important features, but it turns out no one is using them because a very typical model, you build, you win the deal, everyone forgets about it, so no love is put into it. So having these two things in contrast felt like it doesn't make sense to me. Hence, where my partnership with customer success team, CSM, turned out. Can I ask, who here knows who is CSM? Okay, so I assume you're in B2B world. Everyone else probably in consumer or games, etc. So I'm going to talk about the B2B mostly here, but all of it applies in other types of organization. So CSM, Customer Success Manager, is a person who cares, whose job it is to make customers happy in a B2B world. You have a big client, they're paying you likely millions of dollars, and you want to keep them happy. And their number one goal, how they're measured, how their success is measured, is retention. They care a lot about retention. They also care about CSAT, customer satisfaction, or NPS, and they care about lifetime value. That would be expansion, often within that account. But then, when I learned this, I was thinking, hey, like that's me. Like I'm a product manager. I care about retention. I care about CSAT. I care about lifetime value and growth and expansion. Like why are you doing my job? Like it's my job. And then after this childish rant, I realized it's actually we are complementing each other very well. We do it in just very different ways. Product managers achieve this by building new products, creating this value, and the customer success managers do it by explaining the value to the customer, personalizing, customizing if needed, etc. So the ambition we had with Customer Success Manager is this, and it's a lot, so I'm going to break it down a lot. We wanted to increase retention by increasing adoption of retention-driving features, by financially incentivizing CSMs to increase adoption in their portfolio. That's a lot in there, but I think I'm quite proud of this. It's an interesting blend of different ideas. So anybody in the B2C world for sure knows about the concept. There are some features, some behaviors, I should say, that drive retention, and some who don't. So you, as a product manager, you would, or especially growth product manager, sometimes product marketer, you would look for ways, how can I increase adoption of the features? How can I drive behavior that will increase retention? You probably know the concept of Facebook's 7 friends in 10 days, or vice versa. Those are type of the things. So you want to drive behavior and adoption of certain features. So that's what we want to do in a B2B world. But in order to do it, we use the beauty of the B2B world, where we have people who are equipped and incentivized to do just that, who have the personal attention to explain the feature and drive adoption of them. It wasn't working super well, so what we thought we can do is we can incentivize them and essentially increase their salary if they're doing a good job of increasing that adoption. Ambitious goals, but it just made so much sense to me. All right, so now we're going to get into exactly how we did it. That's very execution, very detailed, and I think in this case, devil's in the details. And I think you also see some overlap with what Radhika was saying, and some agreement, some disagreement. It's going to be fun. Great. So where it starts is you cannot achieve this unless the product and customer success leadership are aligned. So like if you're not on the same page, it's not going to work. The leaders need to be aligned to then be able to execute on this. If you're an individual contributor PM, even a director like I was, you can influence it, you can drive the alignment, but you need to make sure that product leadership is on board with this concept, CSM leadership is on board. Thankfully, in my cases, both Vimeo and Deel, they were. Everybody was excited. It made sense to everybody. But that's the first step. Second point, to start this, you pick what type of behavior you want to drive. So specifically in my case, it was pick the retention driving features. This can be super scientific or this can be super guesswork. My general recommendation would be to lean on action. But essentially what you do in a B2C world is much easier. And there's a very good course on Reforge about the product retention that talks a lot about this. What you do is you start running correlation analysis. You used to compare the users who were using certain features, how did they retain comparing to users who didn't use certain features, users who had certain behavior, some intensity of usage versus those who didn't. And then in the end, you will see that the cohorts of users who signed up through certain sources or use certain features, they just retain better. And then you try to drive that behavior and you try to make sure it's causation and not just correlation. In the enterprise world, it's harder because you have less data, but you still can do it and you can still get some results, directional results that will get you somewhere. But also, I should say, like in most companies, the founders and product leadership would probably have a pretty good idea of what are the key behaviors, key features that are most value driving and more sticky. And I can say for sure, like there are some industry best practices. Integrations are an easy bet. Integrations almost always drive retention because it takes a lot of effort on a customer side to integrate, so then they don't want to do it again with someone else, so this drives retention. And this is where customer success are great. They can push, they can explain, they can facilitate, so that's a good example. All right. Oh, and one last thing is, it's interesting, the number of features you want to focus around is interesting. The trade-off here is if you stick to very few features, like 1 or 2 features, then it might turn out that it might not be relevant to the customer. It's already they already using it, and then you're making it hard for CSM to be able to make an impact. So you don't want it to be just one or two features. On the other hand, if it's too many, you overwhelm the customer success and the client. It's too much focus, it's too much things to focus on. So you want to be somewhere in the middle. At Deel, we picked 20 features. It was 20 features we can pick from, and then some of them were relevant to different industries, different verticals, different size of clients. All right. So we have our feature list. The next thing, and probably the most difficult and the most important, and that's where I think the devil is in the detail, is like how you define adoption of a feature changes everything. And that's why I think also a lot of OKRs fail, is just like you can't find the right way to measure value, to measure success, and that's where it fails. And this is very sensitive in this case, because the way you define features, it both drives people's home take salary, what they take home. Like a lot of CSMs would be compensated differently based on how you would define this. On the other hand, if you define this poorly just to optimize for people's salary, you want to drive business value. So you want to find that great balance where you know, I call it like there's a value exchange, where you measure something, you know customer is receiving value out of this, and very likely it will drive retention. If you were running retention correlation analysis, you would be able to get to those definitions better. If you don't, then it's just, you have to be very thoughtful. A good example, and when I was at Deel, and to understand example, you need to know what Deel is. Deel is HR tech company, remote work company. So they help hire people remotely anywhere in the world. And one of the features that we were hypothesizing would drive retention is renting equipment. What Deel offered is when you hire a person, you can also send them a laptop or mobile phone, etc. And it's a fair thesis. Like if you send someone their laptop, it's harder to switch to a different provider because then you need to return all the equipment, etc. So it was a decent thesis. And I remember when I just jumped on it and we started talking, one of the ways the CSM leadership described it is like, okay, we'll just think if the equipment is rented, it's a success. But then I started asking, well, how many people in the company rent equipment, for how long, what type of equipment. All of this is important because, for example, if a company is 5,000 people and only one person in the company rented the piece of equipment, it's not exactly a success. It's not exactly means that there was value exchange, and I don't think it would drive a lot of retention. So in that specific case, I think we landed about 30% of client workforce rented at least one piece of equipment in the last 6 months. And just an example. So this one's very important, and this takes a lot of influence across a lot of product teams. It's also a very rich experience for you as a PM. You will have to work with a lot of other product managers across the organization to align with them what is a good definition of adoption. But it's also a bit daunting, but rewarding, I would say. All right, this is an example of how we did it. This evolved a lot from that time. But the concept, this is a real dashboard we had at Deel measuring this. It's in Looker, early versions. What you can see here, I need a laser. Right, laser, okay, I'll just explain. So at the top, we had a very simple concept. How many organizations we have with at least one feature adopted out of the one that we targeted? And then how many have at least two, and how many have at least three? The data here was outdated on a smaller scale, but it was quite poor. When we started, there was very few organizations that had the features we wanted adopted. Then we had the chart at the bottom, where I have blurred client names, customer names, the CSM names. You see here is their the size of the account, number of people hired by them. And here you have the actual features adopted. And for example, you can see the middle one, active IC is the independent contractor who has the equipment. You can see there was 9% in this case of the workforce had it adopted. And we considered that this organization has at least one feature. The other feature there was autopay. 20% of workforce had autopay, so it was adopted as well. And then the beauty here is you have people accountable for each of these things. So at the top, you can see it can be filtered by the customer success manager. They can look at their own portfolio. Later, we added another filter customer success manager, so like a portfolio manager, and keep them accountable for that. And that's how we created accountability. It was working quite well. It got much richer as we moved on, but I think it shows the idea. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. Last step, which actually picking the incentives, meaning how much additional salary does the CSM get by hitting their targets. I'll be honest, it's none of product managers' business. This is between the CSM and the CSM leadership and the CSMs. But product, like as long as we're aligned on the goals and like what features we measure and how we define them, I think it's like from product side you're good. But if you're interested, where we landed a deal, the principle numbers I think are a bit different. Is essentially if you have 20% of your client base adopting at least 10 of these features, you get about like $400 per month additional. If you get 50% of your clients, you get about $1,000, like this kind of concept. It incentivizes, like it's very actionable. You can work, as a CSM, you can do very specific job, and you can get the features adopted, and you get more money. It's great. And the last point here, ROI from this, it's quite hard to calculate. It's possible, it's quite hard, but I think it takes a bit of leap of faith, and I give huge credit. Deel leadership took a leap of faith, went with it, and as I'll talk soon, it worked very well. And these are the results. So within 6 months of launching this, about 300 people were influenced by this structure. Their OKRs, sorry, Radhika, the OKRs were influenced in a good way, and it was very important that both product managers and CSMs had the same type of OKRs. It was announced that, okay, we're going to increase adoption of these features, and these product teams are focused on this. They're going to make the feature better. They're going to work on the engagement, the UX of the feature, while the CSMs are going to work on the communication and adoption. And they worked together. It was magical. And we actually lifted it. It was very effective. The adoption lifted from about 1% of it was at the beginning to about 35 in 6 months. Very, very impressive and very Deel speed, if anyone knows about Deel. And retention started showing correlation going up. It's a lagging indicator. Retention would take longer. But what I heard from my friends at Deel, it's working. And I think it's a fascinating concept. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. So remember, the key to collaborating with anyone in your org, and probably generally people in life, is to understand their motivation, their either OKRs or incentive structure, and just make sure you don't go in two different directions. But then the second step is, if you can align those incentives, that's like the growth hack, that just magic happens. So many politics are removed, so many barriers, so much friction. So that's a very effective way. And the last one is, it's a very good career opportunity for anyone here who's looking for a next step, feels like they're stuck and their scope is too small. It's a very good thing that like no one is asking for, but you can come up with an idea and suggest. You don't need a lot of resources, just a bit of your time in a day to influence key people, and you can get the results, and you can get the credit, and you can get the experience. So highly recommend it. That's what I did. And I'm going to finish with a little quote here. Anyone recognizes these two gentlemen? Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. If you don't know about them, you definitely should. And Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man, had a very famous quote. If you don't know, now you'll know, and it's going to be the best takeaway. Show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. I'll leave you at that. Thank you very much. I'll just say thank you. Just a quick note. I came here mainly to network with people, so please, if you see me in a corridor, you want to talk, ask questions, give feedback, please shoot me. I'm here all day. I'm here to talk.